Beacons blaze across the land for VE Day, and a silence that could be felt for the millions who died for freedom. Good evening. Half a century after Europe emerged from war, the VE Day commemoration fell quiet for 2 minutes tonight to remember those who were never to know the peace. Across the nation, it was the climax to a day of memories, songs, tears and smiles. In London, echoes of 1945 at Buckingham Palace. In America, President Clinton promised war veterans there that America would stand up still to the forces of darkness. And in Paris, the old president and the new hosted the first of the ceremonies that took world leaders on to Berlin and Moscow. Across the United Kingdom tonight, 1,000 beacons were lit by towns and villages, proclaiming again, 50 years on, the VE Day message of freedom and commemoration. It came on a day which began with the biggest street party of them all, outside Buckingham Palace.
It was the moment that encapsulated the mood of these 3 days of commemoration. The Queen Mother, now almost 95, on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, a poignant link between past and present. Below her, a mass of humanity stretching almost as far as the eye could see, and the palace forecourt transformed for a day into an open-air stage. There'll be the sights and sounds, all so reminiscent of that day 50 years ago, seemed understandably to move her greatly. The vast crowds had converged on the palace, just as they did on VE Day itself, to pay tribute to the woman who, as Queen, had commanded the admiration of a country at war by refusing to leave London, even when the palace was bombed. Half a century ago, those same scenes were the focal point of the nation's celebrations. Time and again, the King and Queen responded to the crowd's entreaties. Today, many of those gathered outside the palace were reliving their experiences of 50 years ago.
It was just out of this world, the fact that you was all felt free again, you know, that you never had any more worries.
Walked home very late at night, feeling as if this could go on forever, you know, you felt so wonderful.
Today, it seemed that London was once again the scene of the biggest street party in the world. At times, it all seemed a little overwhelming. Tonight, in Hyde Park, the grand finale of this long weekend, heavy with nostalgia, began. As the Queen looked on, the actor Robert Hardy recalled Churchill's words on the day that war ended.
God bless you all! This is your victory! It is the victory of the cause of freedom in every land.
Then, in honor of those who died defending that freedom, perhaps the most symbolic moment of these commemorations, as more than 100,000 people stood in silence for 2 minutes. The Queen then lit the first of a chain of more than 1,000 beacons across the land. And a laser was directed to the BT Tower, signalling a burst of fireworks. There was really only one way and one song to end this anniversary. And as it rang out over London, it captured the mood of reconciliation, hope and thanksgiving to which this had all been dedicated. Jenny Bond, BBC News, Hyde Park.
Carlton Hill above Edinburgh was the spectacular setting for the first beacon to be lit following the Queen in Hyde Park. It was the signal for others to follow throughout the country, including an unusual floating beacon off the coast of Northern Ireland. It had been a day to party, and the nation responded in style, with celebrations enjoyed by millions of people. Huge crowds gathered on the Hoe at Plymouth to see the QE2 arrive as part of its VE Day cruise. It was here that thousands of troops embarked for the war in Europe. Today, the children had their own impressions of the importance of the occasion.
It's 50 years ago, beating the Germans and just being free. It's good that we're having VE Day on the Hill, because all the old people that are, won't be alive in 50 years' time.
There was a special tribute for veterans in Scotland who were introduced to the Princess Royal and her husband at a reception following a VE Day church service. On days like this, there's never anything to better the traditional street party. And throughout the country, young and old took advantage of the fine weather to tackle the obligatory jelly and cakes, specially tailored for the occasion. A peal of bells at York Minster, first heard 50 years ago when hostilities ended, was used again today as a mark of respect for those who gave their lives. Wartime memories were rekindled in Dorset when armoured vehicles from a local tank museum paraded along the beach. It was a temporary invasion which for once was welcomed by all. But the lasting image after 3 days of commemorations will be the sight of blazing beacons across the nation. Paul Newman, BBC News.